कर देगा।
लाइव है।
सारे पूछ रहे हैं हैप्पी के चैनल पे क्यों है।
ऑब्वियसली वही बोला था मैंने, कितने बार बोला।
हाँ भाई।
अरे लाइव है, हो गया चालू।
अच्छा हो गया चालू।
हाँ लॉग आउट कर दो सब, बाकी बस सुरगन और विजय।
हाँ बाकी लॉग आउट कर दो सारे। 11 वॉचिंग नाउ, 10 वॉचिंग नाउ। अच्छा हो गया चालू।
हाँ
वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू ज्वाइन। Let's wait for a couple of more people to join. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? Yes, thank you. We'll wait 5 more minutes so that people can sort of tune in. And let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of
sure.
more people to join. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? People out there, please just call your friends, all your batchmates, and we'll wait 5 more minutes so that people can sort of informative and Q&A session for all of them. Let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of
sure.
more people to join. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? People out there, please just call your friends, all your batchmates, and we'll wait 5 more minutes so that people can informative and Q&A session for all of them. Let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of
sure.
more people to join. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? Few more minutes. We'll just tune in at 5. People out there, please just call
Is it
your
better?
friends, all your batchmates, and we'll wait 5 more minutes. Kind of informative and Q&A session. Maybe let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of
sure.
more people to join. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? Few more minutes. We'll just tune in at 5. People out there, please just call
Is it
your
better?
friends, all your batchmates, and we'll wait 5 more minutes. Kind of informative and Q&A session. Maybe let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of.
sure.
We'll start at sharp 5. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? Few more minutes. We'll just. Yeah, it's better now. 5 people out there, please just call
Is it
your
better?
friends, all your batchmates, and we'll wait 5 more minutes. Kind of informative and Q&A session. Maybe let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of.
sure.
We'll start at sharp 5. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? Few more minutes. We'll just. Yeah, it's better now. 5 people out there, please just call
Is it
your
better?
friends, all your batchmates, and we'll wait 5 more minutes. Kind of informative and Q&A session. Maybe let's wait for a
Yeah,
couple of.
sure.
We'll start at sharp 5. Vijay, would you mind turning on your video? Few more minutes. We'll just. Yeah, it's better now. 5 people out there, please just call
Is it
your
better?
friends. So, Vijay, is it good now?
Yeah,
All the relooping and all has been checked off now. Should we start?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, hello everybody. Thanks for joining in for the first ever episode of our CSE podcast, CSE 101. So, I am Surgan Jandyal, a fourth year student, and I'm very excited
Vijay,
to
is it
talk
good
with
now?
Vijay Tadikamalla on
Yeah.
open source development. Vijay has been an
All
avid
the
open source
all the relooping
contributor
and all
and
has
has
been
been
checked off
selected
now.
for GSOC
Should we
twice.
start?
So, hi Vijay, we are very excited to host you
Yeah,
today
sure.
and looking forward to learn great things
Yeah.
from you.
So
Hello
please
everybody.
go ahead
Thanks
and
for joining in
introduce
for
yourself.
the first ever
Yeah.
episode of our
Hi,
CSE
Surgan.
podcast,
First of all,
CSE
thanks for
101.
having me.
So I am Surgan
I think this is
Jandiyal, a
a
fourth year
very great
student, and I'm very
opportunity for me to share my experience. And this is also a very wonderful idea that you are inviting a lot of guests on this CS101 podcast. And I think you should keep doing this. Yeah, it's a great
yes.
initiative from
Thanks,
CSE of
Vijay.
Rajendra.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vijay, for your feedback and all. So to start with, we will first like you to give us a literal definition of what open source is. So, what is it so special about open source that big companies like Google, Facebook, and all the computer enthusiasts around the world are so actively participating in this setting? So, what makes it so special? Please just let us know about this space a bit more.
Yeah. Open source is derived from a term software, open source software. And so open source software is a publicly designed software which anyone can see, contribute, and distribute it with some conditions subjected to the license of the software. So this basically allows all the companies to uh, produce their products in a quite cheap way and efficiently. And also open source is very encouraged by this because the community helps itself. The community
Sure.
raises issues and contributes itself, so a lot of stress on the developers is reduced. So this is why a lot of companies like Google, etc., are encouraging this. And as you can see, a lot of open source software, almost everything is open source now. The OS you are using, the browser you are using,
Mm-hmm.
and that maybe the text
Mm-hmm.
editor you use for code, everything is open source.
Yes, definitely. So, a follow-up question. So, how did you find your love for open source? Or for that matter, how is open source very much reactive towards a computer scientist or a computing enthusiast like a CSE student or somebody else?
Yeah, so basically I started open source because it is fun and it gives me a sense of achievement. When you see your patch or a pull request get merged and see that icon, it basically gives you a lot of sense of achievement. And this can be compared to the sense of achievement when someone sees their answer in competitive programming getting accepted, the happiness of seeing the AC symbol. I think
Mhm.
the happiness of seeing the merge symbol is much more than that.
Okay, that's really a nice answer. So, yes. So moving ahead, so let's say I'm motivated enough for doing open source now. So as a beginner, how should I start? What are my first key points that I should look at? What are my prerequisites? What are the starting programs that I should be indulged in?
Yeah, so first of all, a lot of people think that open source is just about coding. It is not just about coding. First thing, you can contribute to community by fixing by solving some issues. For example, if you come across a GitHub issue and you faced it yourself and you have solved it yourself, so you can just help out the community. Helping the community is also a part of open source. So this is
Yes.
one way, and other way is to go through coding. So what you can do is, if you are interested in some contributing into some open source organization, what you can do is basically read their contributing.md files, readme files, and see how to get started. So this is a very wide way to go through open source. And
Mhm.
for beginners, maybe some structured approach would be participating into some programs like GSOC, MLH, Outreachy. So these programs give you a lot of structured approach to participate into open source. Yeah, and you will find mentors which will who will help you out, and that is quite helpful for beginners. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, a follow-up question for that will be like a beginner, I already had an apprehension like open source, for contributing to open source, I must be a top level coder. I should be very much experienced in the object-oriented programming and all those things that revolve around the open source contribution. So what do
Yeah.
you think? Is it a dilemma or is it actually very much, I mean, a bottleneck for your open source contributions?
As a beginner, you must know some language and basically know GitHub, how to use them. So it is a kind of prerequisite for everything done in computer science. So I think it is not a dilemma. It is an opportunity to learn, and of course, you can learn it easily. So yeah, these are some prerequisites to open source.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that was a very satisfying answer, although. Yes. Moving on. So as you mentioned about couple of programs
Yeah.
like MLH, Outreach, GSOC. I mean, as you have cracked the Google Summer of Code twice, so we would like to know more about why is this program so much special? Why do millions of coders around the world are very much trying hard to get into this program? Why? What is the overview of this program? Please just let us know so that audience around here gets a better insight of this program. And yes.
Yeah. Participating in some open source program finally benefits you. You gain a much deeper knowledge of the real world applications and how they work. Uh, and also, it helps your reputation in open source and career. And basically gain a lot of knowledge, and the you build a lot of connections also. So this is quite a good opportunity to expose yourself to the real world. So that is why I participated in GSOC basically. And so
Okay. Yes.
more
So
about some open source programs. So first of all, I will tell about GSOC later on. Some other programs like MLH, it is recently introduced by GitHub and Facebook, and you can have a look at that. And Outreach is basically GSOC only with a different name and some different rules. It occurs 2 times a year, and it has some differences than GSOC. So now coming on to GSOC. Yeah, so GSOC is an open source program organized by Google. Uh, in this program, it invites a lot of open source organizations. It shortlists them, and these organizations basically post a lot of project ideas and ask the students to shortlist from one of them. And uh, for getting shortlisted, people have to do some contributions, submit a project proposal, and uh,
Mhm.
talk to the mentors. And basically, this is how the workflow is. Yeah.
Got it. Yes. So that was a good introduction about GSOC. So what is usually the timeline of GSOC? I mean, what are the different stages that an applicant should be focusing on, and how to approach each of them respectively?
Yeah. GSOC generally starts around January. The organization submit their uh, ac- proposals to Google, and Google shortlists them. So around February, all the organizations are shortlisted and their projects are posted on the GSOC site. You can go on them and view all the projects each organization has. And students are given about a month to go through the organization, go through the projects, and get familiar with the source code, etc. And around
Yes.
ending of March, students are expected to submit their project proposals. They are given about a 2 or 3 weeks time to submit their project proposals. And after the project proposals are done, around there is 1 month of waiting time for the organizations to shortlist the students. And finally, after that, after the students are shortlisted, we have a 3 phase program, and after that, final GSOC is completed. And this program is basically of 3 months or 12 weeks. So around these 12 weeks, you have to do a lot of open source contributions, and depending upon your work, you are qualified for the next level in the subsequent phases.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So to summarize all of the above things, what I got of sense of it is GSOC is usually a three-stage program. First, you
Yeah,
need to choose an organization, then you submit a proposal, and then you sort of start your coding, and all those stages of qualification and all happen, right?
yeah.
Yes. So moving on, let's so make it to make it more informative. Let's dive deep into all of these subsections more deeply and get to know the insights a bit more of all of them. So first thing will be what are the organizations that participate in GSOC? How, as a beginner, I should shortlist those organizations, and what should be my approach towards going and attacking these organizations for the GSOC project proposal?
Yeah. I think from my experience, I took two approaches, each in 1 year. So first, in my first GSOC, I took an top to bottom approach. So in this approach, what I did was I basically had some skills, and according to that skills, I chose some organization. For example, in IITH, we have a course, Principles of Programming Languages. So in that course, I developed my skill in Haskell language. So I chose Haskell organization because I had some skills in it, and I had also done a similar project, uh, which was one of the project in the GSOC list. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I could apply for that project. So using these skills, showing these skills to the mentor, and also proposing that I can handle this project. Uh, so basically, doing all this, I was able to shortlist the organization. So I chose the organization and project according to my skills. And the second approach would be bottom up approach. So in my second year of GSOC, what I did was I wanted to participate in TensorFlow because TensorFlow is a quite a famous organization, and I wanted to see how the environment is. So I basically started looking at TensorFlow projects, etc. I found a project which was good, TensorFlow datasets. So I had about 2 months of time. So in this 2 months of time, I developed skills needed for the project. I contributed in that project and finally submitted a project proposal which showed all my contribution, etc. So these
Yeah.
are the two
Yes.
approaches a beginner can take.
Yeah. So, the abstract about these two approaches was amazing. Yeah, to reiterate again, Vijay told he followed two approaches. One is the top down, and the other is the bottom up. So, Vijay, I'm very much excited to know about the top down approach, in which you already had the skills and you sort of scouted for the organization who had the relevant projects
Yeah.
and all those things. So, how did you get this motivation? Okay, I have the skills. I can put out this project. I mean, as you mentioned, you learned that Haskell in one of your courses. So, what is the minimum? What do you think is the requirement so that you can apply and get to all those GSOC proposals and all?
Yeah. So the main thing for getting selected in GSOC is basically showing your skills that yes, I can do this project.
Okay.
So this can be done by a lot of things. One thing could be you have some projects which show that yeah, you are capable of doing the GSOC project, or maybe you can already contribute into the organization. So by contributing, of course, you show that you have some skills. Or if you or you can also contact your mentors, ask doubts, and show that you are quite interested in it. And basically, so this interest reflects that you are capable of doing that and you want to do that. So based on the interest, also some mentors might prefer you. So to tell the truth, while getting selected for Haskell, I did not have any contributions. So I got selected in Haskell just
Yeah,
by
that's what.
asking
Yes.
doubts and basically learning more about the project.
Okay. Yes. That's good. So, yeah, the first approach seems to be very much interesting. So, I'll go on to the second approach. So, as you mentioned in the second approach, since you wanted to go into TensorFlow, therefore you learned TensorFlow and developed your skills in the same.
Yeah.
So, let's say the organization, because there is a time between the organizations are listed and the time between when you can apply for the project. So, the
Mhm.
time may not be enough to learn that skill. So, how do
Yeah.
you deal with that? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you learn a skill and develop that skill in 1 month? So what is the bottleneck behind all these approaches and all?
Yeah. So as I said, TensorFlow was one of my favorite organization. So this I could conclude this because I had seen the previous years, and I saw that TensorFlow was
Okay.
selected. So so
Okay.
based on the reputation of the organizations, I almost was assured that this year also TensorFlow
This
was
year
going to be
TensorFlow will also
selected.
come. Okay. Okay,
So
that's a good
I
approach
looked
actually.
through the
Yes.
last year project proposals, etc. Yeah, and I found that there was a project which almost came every year, which had some changes and some minor changes, etc. So I basically contributed in that project a lot. So TensorFlow is quite a big organization. So in some big
Mhm.
organizations, you have to do contributions, and without doing contributions, you can't get selected. So
Okay. Yes.
in that organization, I basically had a time of 2 months. So in these 2 months, I did a lot of contributions, but before these 2 months, I developed a lot of skills required for contributing.
Okay. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes. So this is, I mean, this is a very organization centric approach. And I think for all the big organizations, you
yeah,
have to have a good reputation in those organizations to be able to get into GSOC. Am I right?
yeah, sure, yeah,
Yes. So yeah, that was actually insightful approaches. So now coming on to this top-down approach and the bottom approach that you discussed. So now the main part. Now I have to go ahead and write a project proposal. So can you just let us know the bullets and all those key aspects that everybody in GSOC looks for? How should I create a top class GSOC proposal? What are the key factors that I should look at?
yeah. So in project proposal, there are few points that every mentor looks at. So first thing is basically your detailed information that everyone provides, and afterwards, if you have some projects which reflect your skills, do include it in the project proposal. And after that, you have to include a short description of your project, so which reflects your understanding of the project. And finally, you have to mention a detailed breakdown of the project, how you will handle it, in what timeline you will handle this part of the project, and what. So basically, mention a timeline, and in each timeline, you mention what part you will achieve. So this reflects your
Mhm.
preparedness also. So and also list
Okay.
out your
Yes.
contributions. So contributions also reflects your skills. So basically, your project proposal should reflect all of your skills, and that you are able to complete the project without failing it.
Complete the project. Complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
Vijay,
one
that
more
that
thing.
was a lot of content in one shot. So maybe I would like to break it down so that our viewers are like more informative about each of them. So first, I would like to ask you is when you talked about the project proposals. So first thing, so do we have to choose from the enlisted projects, or is it like something we go onto the repository and think on our own? So what is the approach that we follow, and how do we brainstorm while writing a project?
Yeah, so every organization, when it gets selected, it lists out project they have. So maybe you can choose from one of them, or you can propose your own project.
Okay.
But proposing your own project comes with its own difficulties. You have to find suitable mentors.
Okay. Yes.
So if you don't find suitable mentors, although your project idea is very awesome, you will have to face difficulties, and finally you may or may not be able to contribute in that organization further. So you can choose the
Okay.
projects,
Yes.
yeah, from the list of the projects the organization gives. Yeah,
Okay. Yes. So, okay, yes. So, after choosing the project, so what I can infer from your talks is the main step that GSOC looks for is how do we convince the mentors so
yeah.
that, yes, we are the right pick for this project. So, what advice would you like to give since you are a two-time GSOCer? So, what advice would you like to give us about how should I convince the about the mentors about my project and all?
Yeah, so first basic approach would be to submit your project proposal as soon as possible. So when you submit your project proposal, obviously your mentors will take a look at it. And if you submit late during the timeline, maybe your project proposal may not be chosen, and your mentors may not contact you. And you also may want to contact your mentors well before the projects are announced, or maybe just after the projects are announced, and interact with them a lot. Try to ask doubts if you have any, or suggest any ideas. So all these things reflect some skills, and maybe also contribute to the organization. So for contributing, maybe you can just go into their GitHub issue list and try to look at some issues which have some labels like contributions welcomed, good for beginners. So this were some approaches I followed. I also have another approach which I took during the TensorFlow GSOC time. What I did was, there is a competition called Google Codin, which is for
Google code.
yeah, which is for children of the age from 13 to 17 years. So basically, people in college can't participate in it. But they have this Google Coding has a lot of tasks in it, which have a lot of good material related to the organization.
Okay.
So what you can do is basically go into these tasks. So one of the tasks can be raising a pull request in this repository for this idea. So it will have some ideas, and it will have approach how to do it. So you can refer to that task and go through it and follow all the resources, and finally you will be able to raise a pull request. So that's how I made my first pull request. So after that, I was
Okay.
quite familiar with the project, and I could contribute more.
I
Yeah.
contribute. Yes. So to summarize all what you've said, so your keys to the a successful project proposal will be going early, then knowing the organization as much as we can
Yeah.
by using ad hoc information from Google Codin or all those things that you used for your TensorFlow organization, and then trying to create a dialogue with the, I mean,
Mentor.
maintainers of that repo and the mentors, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a very structured approach to go for a project proposal. And as you mentioned before, you should go in early. So why is that? Does it give you more time for discussion of your doubts regarding the proposal, or it's like the proposal going early have more chance of getting screened, or what is it? I mean, are the proposals shortlisted in first few days of something, or what is it exactly?
Yeah. So starting early is basically you getting your mentor's attention as soon as possible. So maybe
Yes.
later in the deadline or the project proposal deadline, a lot of people flood their project proposals. Some people just submit
Yes,
few,
yes,
and
yes, yes.
maybe your project proposal will be lost in it, or maybe you send an email to your mentors regarding some doubts, which actually might show that you are quite interested and you have looked through the project, but it might get lost in their emails, because a lot of
Okay.
GSOC organizations are basically flooded with all the
Mhm,
participants' emails,
mhm.
responses, project proposals, etc. So diving in early can be a good thing.
Got it. Yes. 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 I see the point. I see the point. Okay. Yes. So now the last question of mine will be: let's say you propose a very good proposal, project proposal, but are there still, I mean, mistakes that you can do so that even after having all these things intact, you might lose your GSOC chance? What are the risks that are still involved that you might want the beginners to overlook and prepare accordingly?
Yeah, so after the deadline is over, kind of, you submit the project proposal. Most of the students are like, "Yeah, abhi to submit kar diya, abhi aur kya kare?" So you should
Exactly.
avoid that
Exactly.
kind of
That's the
thing.
point. Yes.
So after the submission, there is a period of 1 month time. I am not saying that you should entirely dedicate your time in it. Maybe some weekends you can take some time off and give it 1 or 2 hours, contribute something, maybe ask issues, ask your doubts, raise issues. Mentors are happy to address some kinds of interesting issues or propose some feature. All these things can be done. You don't have to code actually, but you can do this, showing that you are going to interact in future.
Yes. So it's all about networking with the mentors and
Yeah,
getting
exactly.
your reputation up by, yes.
Yeah.
So one question that just popped in my mind is it possible to amend your project proposal? I mean, Let's
No,
say I
no.
get some very interesting idea after that.
Okay.
Is it any chance of that?
So
Uh,
during the submission period, you can submit your project proposal. Your mentors might give you feedback, and you can do some changes in it. But after the submission, this cannot be done. But however, you can contact your mentors and discuss with
contact the
them.
mentors. Okay.
So apart from the project proposal, you might give some additional suggestions, etc. But they might not be very useful, but they will still help you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yes. So it's now the project has been submitted. You've been accepted to GSOC. Now the
Yeah.
final portion. Now you've been accepted to GSOC, right?
Hmm.
So now, how do you? I mean, is it for you to plan the execution of the program, or do you get some guidance? How do you plan your execution for the first phase evaluation and all those things? Or is it something you have to already propose it in your project proposal, well defined?
So actually, there can be a lot of changes in the project you have proposed,
Yes, yes,
because the
that's right.
mentors
Yes.
might have some other or better approaches. So mentors will actually guide you. You don't have to uh, force yourself through the
Okay.
pain of proposing everything, doing everything. Mentors will always help you. Um, you just have to show the initiative that uh, I will be doing it, and yeah, etc. The encouragement should be from your side. Mentors will handle all
Encouragement should be
the
well defined. Okay.
structure of the project, etc.
Yes. So yeah. So now coming to the exact coding. So how do you spend time on GSOC projects? How many hours do you contribute? Do you actually learn new things while doing your project, or is it like you have all the things well defined? So how do you face challenges and overcome them while doing GSOC?
So obviously you will learn new things, and the thing you project
Yeah.
propose in your project will not be the exactly the same thing you will learn in GSOC. You will learn a lot of more things. So so be ready to expect quite a few challenges, and mentors will help you out definitely. So so coming to the hours spent in the GSOC, so I spent about 30 to 40 hours per week. So
Per week. Okay.
yeah, so basically around 5 hours per day, you can say. Mentors always encourage you to take your weekends off. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's again very insightful thing. So yeah, coming down to some conclusions of this program.
Hmm.
So since you've cleared it twice, so what are your takeaways as part of learning about open source, or as part of developing your reputation in open source and developing your love towards open source? What are the key takeaways of this program?
Yeah, so the first key takeaway I would suggest is after GSOC is over, don't just end your project. Keep contributing to open source. You learn a lot. Actually, contributing to the library and triaging issues and maintaining the library gives you a lot of happiness, I would say. I'm still contributing to Haskell, and I will still continue to contribute in TensorFlow. So the as I said, that the merged PR, when you see a merged PR, the happiness is never ending. So yeah,
Yes, yes, yeah, that's
the
a
sense
true.
of accomplishment, and yeah, and you learn a lot of new things, and you are actually solving some real world problems. So this will definitely help you in your career ahead. Not
Mhm.
take GSOC as a program and just end it.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, one of my last questions before we go on to the exact Q&A session will be, so what is the summarized message to all the people watching regarding open source or regarding GSOC? How should we, why should we do it? How should we do it? And what are the steps after getting into some program? What is the bigger picture of all these programs?
Yeah. So getting started into open source, a myth is that you have to be some ninja developer, and that is not the case. You can always learn, and you will learn. Obviously, your skills are not sufficient, you will learn it. So just try to be encouraged and participate in it. Maybe try not to bug your mentors or the open source contributors with every small issue you face. Try to Google it out, try to figure it out yourself, but don't give too much time doing this. Maybe about an hour or so is good, but after that you can ask your doubt, but don't just ask doubts because you have any. Try to ask yeah, sensible doubts, and which are kind of difficult to resolve. Then your mentors and the contributors, whoever are there in that organization, will definitely help you out. That is
Yes,
the spirit
definitely.
of open source, basically.
Yes. So yeah, thanks, Vijay. We had a lot of good discussion. So now let's move on to the Q&A session. We have a couple of questions lined up.
Yeah.
So beginning with, first question that we would like to have is, will you be becoming a GSOC mentor for the next year?
Uh, so see, what I'm doing now is basically mentoring. So the this thing should not affect you. So the I become a GSOC mentor is basically a secondary thing. If you are contributing to the organization I am participating, I am contributing in it, I will definitely help you out, whether I am a mentor or not. So it will not affect you, obviously. So
Exactly.
you should not
Exactly.
be concerned with these kind of things, that I am a mentor or not.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So coming on to some serious questions. First, how do you actually contribute to open source? How do you find issues? How do you understand the entire code repository before proposing a pull request or something like that? What's your approach to do that?
So I think I covered this quite a lot, but still I will summarize this. So
Yes,
yeah,
one line of your approach.
yeah. So go to the repository, look at how to contribute. There is always something which shows that how to contribute. So basically these can be in contributing.md or readme. And if there is a GitHub issue list, you try to look at some labels which have contributions welcome, good for beginners, etc. So you can use this approach. Or if you face some issues and you have solved it and you find that it is there in some Stack Overflow or GitHub issue list, you can just resolve it. And this is also a type of open source contribution without coding. Yeah.
Sure, sure. So one question that we have is, please talk about non-GSOC OSS movement, which is which they call is far bigger and people can learn a lot from them.
What non-GSOC OSS movement?
Non-GSOC OSS. I think the question means ki other programs like MLH,
Okay,
do
okay,
these programs require a similar project proposals, or
okay, okay.
just in a few lines maybe you can summarize all those
Yeah.
things.
So as I said, there are a lot of programs, but quite famous one are MLH and Outreachy. So Outreachy is basically mm, very similar to GSOC. You have to submit a project proposal. Uh, but in Outreachy, there are a lot fewer organizations, you can say, and it occurs twice a
Mhm.
year. Unlike GSOC, which is just in
Twice a year.
August,
Okay.
Outreachy occurs twice a year. Unfortunately, this time it was cancelled because of COVID. In MLH,
Okay.
this MLH is actually a new program, and the structure of the program is quite evolving. So last year it just had one open source track. This year it has something called Explorer track, open source track, and externship track. So these three tracks are quite different from each other. So in Explorer track, maybe you have to propose an idea, and it will be your idea you will be working on, not your mentor's idea, etc. And in the
Okay.
open source track, you will obviously work on some open source software. And in the externship track, you are actually employed into some real world company. So this year, I think only US citizens were allowed to participate in the externship track because the organization was US Army. So they
Okay.
had some
Yes.
projects in US Army, etc. So in MLH, coming to the selection part, you don't have to submit a project proposal. You have to submit a piece of code which shows your talent. And finally, you will be interviewed on that piece of code, what you have done it in it, and you will be asked some questions, etc. So project proposal is
I
not a
see.
part
Yes.
of this.
Yes. Yes. So moving on. So one question that we have is, how did your Department of Computer Science, IIT Hyderabad, help in, what are the courses that you would regard were most helpful and beneficial when it comes to contributing open source? How would you encourage your juniors to do these kind of activities along with the academics, as they say?
Firstly, as I said, in IITH, I had a course called Principles of Programming Languages, in which I learned
Okay.
Haskell. Okay, and I built
Yes.
me and my team built a project. So that was related to the GSOC project I did. So that was the first point I did started in GSOC.
So
So
just to
other
stop, to all the IIT Hyderabad guys attending, do register for that course, Popal by Professor Saurabh Joshi. I
yeah
mean, we will see a lot of GSOCers now and then after guidance from Vijay. Thanks, Vijay. So yeah, please continue. Sorry for interrupting you.
yeah sure. Apart from that, what you could do is take a programming course. Obviously, you have to do some programming course and try to use that skill not just for competitive programming. Try to develop some softwares. Try to take some real world experience. And basically, if there are some projects, courses which help you develop a project or something, try to publish it on GitHub and try to uh, uh, share it with your connections, your networks, so that they can give you feedback on that project. So basically build connections and try to develop your project on your own. Don't just develop a project and leave it to be dead. You should
Get
always
it.
be
Yes.
contributing, do something, etc.
Yes. Yeah, so that's a very good answer. So let's say if I want to talk about number of hours, so I mean, just for the statistics, what are the number of hours that I should contribute in a week so that I say, okay, I am actually developing in open source? Because a lot of people I have seen is they do one or two issues, then they leave it for like months, and then they jump again, and this irregularity happens. So what do you think is a good number for continuous open source engagement and all those things?
Yeah, so you should not pursue open source as a kind of job, first of all. So you can try to do it as a
That's a
hobby.
good question. Yes.
So
Yes.
whenever you are free, please contribute and try to look at just not just one organization. So if just yesterday I saw bug in VS Code and I thought, why should I fix it? I just reported it and
Mhm.
left it. So maybe you can try to look at it and fix it. So all these
Yes.
things
Yes.
can be done. Yeah, not just doing as a practice for something. Do it as a hobby
Yes.
instead.
Definitely. Yeah. So one of the last questions. People say, ki, is there any chance that I will get a job at Google after clearing GSOC? What are the links with the two?
Okay, so first of all, I think I need to share the benefits of GSOC apart from the skill developing part.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so okay, yeah, you do get a referral for a job at Google. So whenever you apply, they will have a separate list for GSOC students, and that will help you out. But obviously, you will still have to do competitive coding, etc. And that referral will not help you if you are not good at it. So try to develop competitive coding skills also. So don't be just I did GSOC, I will get a job at Google. And apart from this referral, you get a stipend, and the stipend is quite good. It varies according to country. Yeah. So and apart from that, you get also swags. This year, I unfortunately did not get any because of COVID, and that is sad.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. So I think all the questions have been more or less covered either in the talk or towards the end. So there is one last question that that asks you about, how did you manage to do both intern at Microsoft as well as Google TensorFlow GSOC? So guys, just to reiterate, Vijay did intern at Microsoft this summer along with GSOC in TensorFlow. So that's what folks are asking. How did you manage both of them?
So yeah, the internship was delayed actually. My Microsoft internship was delayed. Otherwise, it was not clashing a lot. So because of this delay, there was around a 15-day overlap. So in this 15-day overlap, I tried to talk with my mentors at GSOC and at Microsoft. So they were happy that I was doing both, but they did not try to force me on doing something more. They were just like, बाद में कर लेना कोई बात.
Okay.
So it was
Yes,
not
yes.
quite
So
hectic.
that's a good achievement actually doing both of them simultaneously. Yeah. So concluding this, I think all of the questions have been covered so far. So I mean, we'll still wait for 1 or 2 minutes. If anybody has some more questions, please either put it on the chat here or on the Slido link. We'll be grateful to answer them. So regarding this, Vijay, let me ask one more question to you.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? I mean, what's the bigger picture of your open source contributions? Do you actually see yourself maintaining those repos, or is it like, okay, I'll go in whenever I get time? So, what's your love for open source and all?
So as for the current TensorFlow project, I'm already a kind of maintainer. I'm all means triaging issues, fixing bugs, and helping some beginners who are
Okay,
asking
you also
some.
review pull requests and all?
Yeah, I do review
Okay,
pull
okay,
requests,
okay.
etc.
Yes,
But
yes.
I'm not allowed to merge them, obviously. But yeah, I'm a maintainer kind of person on that repository.
Okay,
The Haskell project actually, the scope of the project was completed. So if there are some new bugs, I do contribute in it. So currently, I'm not a very active maintainer because the project is quite finished until there are some future developments in the YAML part of the project, which is not related to something
yes,
I'm doing.
okay. So you see yourself as a lifelong contributor to open source. Yes, that's a
Yeah.
great ambition to look forward. We have one more question. Can we work in groups for GSOC?
You can work in groups. Maybe if you are lucky enough, your group entire group might get selected into GSOC, but you can't apply as a group. That's one
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if the scope of the project is quite wide, maybe a lot of people may get selected. But if the scope is not very wide, maybe only one of you will get selected.
Okay. Yes. Yes. So I'm sorry to trouble you again. There is one last question that we would like to take. What is the branch bottleneck? Can a non-CSE student get selected in GSOC?
Yeah, obviously, a non-CSE student can get selected in GSOC. So just to iterate over the stats I saw in the GSOC page, around 50% are from computer science, and around 20% are from mathematics and statistics backgrounds and electrical, etc. And around 30%, which is a significant number when it comes to non-coding branches. They are also apart from for GSOC. They come from engineering, science, biology. So in GSOC, there are a lot of organizations. For example, CERN. CERN is a part of physics, and you have to do some coding. And a lot of biology organizations also come into GSOC. So having a biology background or a physics background may help you. So try to reach out to that
Yes.
organizations and look at them.
Okay. Yes. So just to point it out again, if I am from engineering physics, my chances of getting accepted to CERN or any other physics related organization will be more. Can you say this?
Obviously, if you have some good physics background and the project demands similar skills, obviously you can get selected. It is
Okay.
not
Yes.
that a CS guy will have an edge over you, and maybe it can be the
Okay.
case that
Yes.
you have
It's
an
it's
edge over them.
so to conclude, it's all about best match kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I think I can take this question. This is going to be the last question, people. From which year of BTech you started your open source contribution?
So I started my open source contribution in my third semester exactly. So, but to just to be clear, you can always start from your first year. I was actually afraid as a first year that I don't have sufficient skills, and I was like, "Mera to kya hi hoga?" So don't be like that. You can obviously start into open source. I actually saw a lot of person this year as a first year they were selected into some web development organizations, etc. So some organizations, obviously you have to do some research and try to find out which organizations kind of select beginners, which may or may not requires a lot of skills.
Yes, so I think all of the stuff is being covered more or less. So just to conclude, open source and then developing your skills to open source and then getting the best match is all the timeline that you want to have for any program. It does not depend on the year which you are in or the branch which you are from. It's all about the best match considering your skills and the requirement of the project.
Exactly.
So ending this, it was a very informative session. So I would request everybody out there to, if you have any more questions like this, please reach out to Vijay. His description and all those links are there in the bottom. Please do follow our Twitter page, CSE IITH. We'll be hosting more such talks in the near future. We'll be also happy to answer all the questions related to this talk. Please do DM us over LinkedIn or Twitter, any of the stuff. We'll be happy to take all the questions. And if possible, we'll also look out for more dedicated and streamlined topics regarding the same concept in the near future. So thanks guys for attending. I'm very thrilled to get this kind of viewership in our first episode of CS One-on-One. In the next episode of One-on-One, we'll come with another expert and we'll go one-on-one discussion with the same. So thanks everybody. Have a good night and a good weekend to end for. Yes. Thank you.
Sure.